Greetings and salutations, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for Week 8 of the 2024 fantasy football season. I began laughing almost immediately, mainly because, what happened in Week 7 has to be a joke, right? It's a sick joke. There are some people pulling the strings, the puppet play that we are witnessing. The volume of injuries, the dud performances, I just don't know what to do anymore. An absolute shambles of a week. Now, listen, there were some great performances here and there. Of course, Lamar Jackson, 5 passing touchdowns, Baker Mayfield able to still be a relevant option, even with, Mike Evans going down early in that game, K-Dot and a stud. Chris Godwin, what an absolute disaster. From what I read from Adam Schefter, not too many moments ago, out for the season, probably with the ankle dislocation. What an absolute sad scenario. Now, again, there are still some positives here and there. Mark Andrews is back, guys. Who still has him on roster? Nobody. But hey, if you do, congratulations. Mark Andrews is back if you haven't heard already. Man, I don't know. Week 7 was really bad across the board. Brandon Ayuk out for the season. DK Metcalf, MCL sprain. Geez Louise. Jaden Daniels now week to week with the rib injury. Interesting stuff. Either way, over the course of the next hour, we're going to be answering questions in regards to Week 8 and beyond. Whether it's waiver wire questions, trade questions, starter sit questions, whatever it ends up being, send it in my direction. Make sure you include your scoring format, whether that is a standard, a half PPR, and a full PPR. Earlier today, we did post the waiver wire episode with Ricky Pearsall on the thumbnail of today's episode. Of course, Ricky Pearsall going to have value with Brandon Ayuk out for the season with a confirmed ACL and MCL. Many of you I have already seen in the chat are asking, is it Jalen McMillan season? Yeah, look, at this point, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin down, Mike Evans with the hamstring most likely is going to be on the injured reserve, going to miss at least 4 weeks. It's going to be Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer probably, if he's healthy. Maybe a little bit of a couple sprinkles potentially of, Sterling Shepard. We're going to have to wait and see how they want to address that as an offense. Jalen McMillan would probably be pretty high up there in terms of waiver priority, especially considering we know that, of course, Godwin's probably out for the season. McMillan will probably be number 2 behind Pearsall, if I had to just off the cuff say so. So going forward, obviously going to be a very high value. But yeah, very, very interesting. Earlier today, besides, suggesting some players via the waiver wire episode, we had a underdog entry. And boy, this week was just rough. I hit 4 of the 5. And for some reason, the Los Angeles Chargers are allergic to scoring touchdowns. 5 field goals from Cameron Dicker. I'm sure somebody in the chat here got 20 points from Cameron Dicker today. But I wasn't one of them. And I was the one that got screwed over today, unfortunately, by the overall result of J.K. Dobbins not scoring a touchdown. Otherwise, everything else was on path to be very successful. This weekend was a complete disaster. Devontae Smith killed me. Travis Kelce killed me. Austin Eckler killed me. Malik Neighbors. Really, the whole Giants offense, nowhere to be found. 3 points as an offense. What a disaster. Okay, anyway, let's start answering questions. I could vent for very long. You guys know that, right? We're all struggling. You're not the only one, trust me. Young Motivated sends in the first question of the day, says, so start Rachaad White or Bucky Irving, LOL. At this point, both of them, right? Both of them are probably going to continue to be relevant. Obviously, Sean Tucker was a kind of blip within the overall conversation. Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, considering there's no one else to throw the ball to, Baker Mayfield. I call him Bucker Mayfield because Bucky Baker. Anyway, that's the backfield. Considering the situation is what it is with all the injuries, the check down is probably going to be open quite often. And obviously, Rachaad White is a very capable receiving back. Bucky Irving has demonstrated that he is very much so capable in that conversation. And they ran the ball down Baltimore's throat when given the opportunity to do so. They were very efficient in that approach, and they'll probably continue to hammer that for the remainder of the season. Let's see here. Cowboys 9511 sends in a question. Says, prioritize Caleb Williams or Tua Tagovailoa on the waivers. Between the two, I prioritize Caleb Williams if he's available. before I put out today's video, obviously I was doing my research in regards to players and their availability. Caleb Williams was like 70+% rostered already, so I didn't think that mentioning him was required, mainly because I thought he would probably already be rostered in very many leagues. But if he's available, he would be the priority option within the overall conversation. As for your next question, Cowboys, it says, and do you think Kupp will be on a snap count next week? For this upcoming Thursday, I want to think that it's probably the case. I really don't know. I can't take, unfortunately, Sean McVay's word as the final overall situation, because he said that Whittington would have no limitations, and Whittington's out there playing 9 snaps the whole game. So I don't know what we're going to see out of Cooper Kupp. I want to hope that if he's active, that he is going to be at a full capacity. Again, in many of our instances, we have to play him because of the uncertainty. Again, even though like earlier today they said, oh, Cooper Kupp was given the full practice designation. They didn't practice in pads today. So really it's an irrelevant thing. They're not going to practice in pads all week long, in fact, because they play on Thursday. So we're just going to have to hope that maybe Cooper's going to be at a higher capacity than expected. Again, they're definitely going to need him if they want to try to compete against the Vikings. Abide Los Angeles says, trade Amari Cooper for Deebo Samuel in a full PPR. Happy birthday, Andrew. Thank you very much. As for the trade, honestly, I don't mind that at all. Again, Amari Cooper is going to be a value. I'm glad that he scored a touchdown, just like I mentioned this time last week in regards to after the trade. I wanted to wait until Amari Cooper could have some big performances and then ship him off after, kind of giving somebody else in your league the interpretation of, hey, he's going to be a value, and just trying to go and snag a player that is more valuable. I know that Deebo Samuel right now has pneumonia. I don't know what exactly the recovery process, how long he could potentially be out for with that. We'll have to keep that monitored, but if he's going to be back by at least this week, then sure, let's make that move. Andy sends in a question, says, how do we feel about Caleb versus Darnold rest of season? Cheers. I think, okay, look, Darnold not throwing 2 passing touchdowns was a surprise, in my opinion. Ultimately, going forward, I expect him to have easier matchups, easier overall circumstances in terms of game script, and should be able to dice up defenses. But Caleb Williams and his rushing upside and what he presents in that circumstance, and considering rest of season probably has top 3 easiest schedule at the quarterback position, I'd like to have both on roster most likely, and then just play matchups. If both of them are your number 2 theoretically, Andy, then at that point, between the two, I'd probably just stick with Caleb because of that rushing potential for upside, and of course him looking as great as he has as of late. But yeah, he's got a really advantageous schedule going forward in terms of matchups. CG Ghosts NY sends in a question, says, happy birthday, brother. Thank you very much. 7-0. Letting him hang. Hey, listen, brother. 7-0 is pretty crazy. I don't have a single team that's 7-0. So just understand, it's not just a matter of like, did you draft a great team? You managed to avoid ridiculous injuries, have hit the waiver wire hard, and of course, I mean, again, I would assume that you're probably leading the league in points, but every now and then, even with like my best teams in some leagues, there will be weeks where my team puts up 85 points and is a complete ghost show and nobody shows up. So congrats. Anakin sends in a question, says, I lost Ayuk and Godwin. On top of losing Rice and Tyreek Hill with no Tua. Least Pacheco likely to be back. Least Pacheco. Okay, I think you meant at least Pacheco is likely to be back. Marvin Harrison and Tony Pollard for CeeDee Lamb, question mark. I mean, look, the upcoming schedule for the Dallas Cowboys is negative game scripts galore, to the point to where if CeeDee Lamb isn't getting 14 targets a game for the remainder of the season, I will be personally distraught. So I don't mind it, but I think it might be, well, considering what Marvin has kind of looked like as of late, I don't mind the trade. I'll be okay with getting CeeDee Lamb in that circumstance and going forward. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Prohibit sends in a question. Thanks. Thank you very much, Prohibit. Says, in a standard league, I'm 6-1. I traded Chuba Hubbard plus Sam Darnold for Tyreek Hill. Beautiful trade. Congratulations. Firm handshake. That is well done. Do you see old Tyreek back with Tua? Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, against that defense, the Arizona Cardinals looked great today. Okay, they were able to stop the run. They're fantastic. I guarantee you the Cardinals get 35 points dropped on their head this upcoming week. Someone write it down. Someone, at me, quote me. If Tua Tagovailoa is playing quarterback and is not concussed, he will light up that defense. I can assure you that. Lou sends in a question. Says, PPR, is Mayfield sell high? I have Murray. Yeah, at this point, I mean, look, Mayfield's played incredibly well. What is that? 3 touchdowns in 4 consecutive games. But going forward, without Godwin and without Evans, what is this offense? Obviously, they were still able to function with, K. Dotton down the seam. the running backs finding themselves success here and there, but ultimately the offense is, predicated on these two wide receivers dominating. And if they're both going to be absent for a, significant volume of time, Godwin for perhaps the rest of the season, at least an IR stint for Mike Evans, considering, hamstrings are not to be messed with. And of course, he's an older player. I would say that, yeah, he's probably a sell high, but I don't know how many teams in your league will be looking to potentially buy in on Mayfield, considering all that has taken place in terms of injuries just tonight. Thank you very much, Lou. Young Motivated sends in a follow-up, says, did you notice Tracy completely outsnapped? Yeah, trust me. Listen, Devin Singletary's done. I mean, I don't know if the reason why they lacked his usage is because, dude, even Eric Gray played more on third downs than Devin Singletary. But yeah, it's Tracy's show, and I love to see it. This is why when people were asking me last week, do I drop Tyrone Tracy? I said, no, we can't. We can't in good conscience drop him if there is a possibility that he could outright win the job. And that's exactly what has taken place. I was writing it down because I wanted it for tomorrow's script for the running back rankings video. Let me go pull it up. In terms of overall snaps, let's go here. Let's look up Tracy. So in terms of overall snaps, he outsnapped Devin Singletary 39-12. Not only that, Devin Singletary didn't play a single third down snap in all the short yardage situations, like second and well, it doesn't even matter. First, second, or third down, as long as it's 3 yards or less, Tracy was in every single scenario. So he's not only just like the shorter yardage back, he is a third down back. He is the 2-minute drill back and completely outsnapped him at a high capacity. Again, hopefully they've noticed how great Tracy has played. And they're like, you know what? Devin Singletary is a 1-year thing. Like, let's lean towards the future and let him continue to cook. Let's see here. P. Maney sends in a question. Says, received an offer, my Jacobs and Amari Cooper for Achane and Olave. What's your thoughts? Okay, so rest of season, I would venture to say that Achane, with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa for the remainder of the year, will absolutely outscore Josh Jacobs. Now, as for Olave versus Amari Cooper, that one's tough because, again, Amari Cooper has technically the better quarterback, the better offense. They are implicated to score more points on a weekly basis, etc. While, of course, Derek Carr dealing with an injury, Olave coming off of his own concussion protocol. Again, anytime a player gets a concussion throughout the season, it always scares me because if you get 2 concussions, you're going to the IR. It's done. So, in this circumstance, I'm willing to take the risk on Olave only because I so much so believe in Achane. Now, Achane has a lot of variable risk around him, and so does Olave because Derek Carr, his old, and him being Derek Carr. So in this circumstance, the safer option is to probably keep with Jacobs and Amari Cooper. If you're sitting on a team that is a winning record, strong team, they are pillars of your offenses and starters every week, I'd probably keep and just keep it rolling. If you are in a completely opposite section where you're like 2-6, 3-4, and you're trying to make a move to try to give yourself a boost in the future, I'd say, yeah, let's go for it. But that's just the riskiness just compounding in that scenario. Ross Roberts says, trade Connor /Dobbins /Reed /Devontae Smith for Henry and Lamb. So you'd be trading 4 players for 2. I'd only ever do a trade of this caliber if you are playing in a league in which it's a start 7 and it's an 8-team league. In a 10-team, 12-team league, I couldn't feasibly accept a trade of this caliber, mainly because, again, I don't have the context to the rest of the team. And additionally, there are too many good players that you would be giving away just for 2 starters. You'd have to be in a smaller league in which you have a bunch of other all-stars already on roster to be able to fill in for the gaps that are made with this trade, Ross. Let's see here. Colm Fitzpatrick sends in a question. Nothing attached to it. Let me see if I can find you in the live chat here. Where's Fitz at? Fitz, do me a favor and type in the chat. Thanks, man. Anakin sends in a question. Says, at least Pacheco is likely to be back. My bad. No, you're good. I figured out that's what you meant. Yeah, I just feel like it decimated with all the injuries. If not Lamb, which wide receiver can I get for Marvin Harrison and Pollard? No, I think that's fine. I have no issue with that at all, especially considering Lamb hasn't played to his peak of potential. If it's not him, it's Tyreek Hill. If it's not Tyreek Hill, then it's somebody else within that top tier of the conversation. But again, it would be very difficult, I think, to get like a Jamar Chase or an A.J. Brown for that in exchange. So if you can get Lamb, let's go for it. I have no issue with that. Appreciate it. All right, Fitz says, hi, Andrew. Do I trade Devontae and Wilson? Okay, so Devontae, I'm assuming, is Adams, and Wilson as in Garrett. in this trade: Wilson slash Devontae, Pollard, and BTJ for Kyron Williams and Nico Collins. Okay, look, again, very similar in which I just talked about with the question that was sent in from Ross Roberts. You'd only make a 4-for-2 trade if you were playing in a smaller league in which you already have a bunch of studs on roster, so where you're losing 4 starters and that is not going to hurt you. Because otherwise, typically, if you're playing in like a 12-team league, losing Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith on top of BTJ and Pollard would kill a team if you're only getting 2 players in return, and one of those 2 players specifically being Nico Collins, who isn't going to be back for another 2 consecutive weeks. So in this circumstance, and again, not only that, he also has an upcoming bye week. So there's 3 games in the future that he's going to miss, minimum. So yeah, I think I'd probably hold, unless you get more players in return, or unless you're in a smaller league where you're like, listen, AJ, I already still have AJ Brown, I have Neighbors, I have, I don't know, Aaron Jones. Like, this is not going to hurt me. Like, in the long run, like, I still have a really stable core, then sure. But otherwise, I probably keep the depth that you have on roster, because it'd be really hard to recover from losing all of that. Ryan sends in a question. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan says, I'm in a 12-man PPR league, 3 wide receivers. Trade Pacheco for Debo. Yeah, absolutely. You should, because again, at this current moment, if you're going to get an infusion of Debo to your lineup in comparison to Pacheco, who you again are going to have to wait until week 10 for him to return, because again, original prognosis of the injury, coming back from it, they said it was about 6 to 8 weeks theoretically. Last season, we saw a very similar timeline, because the same injury that occurred to Pacheco this season took place to Mark Andrews last season. And it took him from week 13, I think. Wait, actually, let me actually remember this. Thursday, Bengals, Ravens 2023. What day was that on? That was on November 16th of last season. So November 16th, and then he returned in the playoffs for that game in January. So theoretically, with that 2, 4, 6, again, yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. That seems about right. So I would say it's probably more towards 8, considering he got injured in week 2. Again, week 10 is probably week 10, 11 is probably the most likely comeback scenario. So yeah, getting Debo works. As for your next question, oh, actually not even question, just context as for your team. Jaden Daniels, Brees, Mason, Dell, JSN, Mooney. Yeah, listen, I think it's a great idea to get this move. Give you a little bit more wide receiver depth, because you certainly will need it going forward here in this scenario, based on what I can see from your team as is. Thank you. All right, scrolling down, we had a question that came in from Caden. Thank you, Caden. It says, I dropped Laporta for Ferguson. Did I make a right move? I mean, at this point, okay, so hear me out. Never in my entire life have I ever seen, while doing this on YouTube, even prior to when I played fantasy and it wasn't publicized on a actual channel, I haven't seen a tight end one like Laporta come out the gate so hot and then completely disappear in their second season. Now, the only other time that I can remember this potentially happening, okay, was Kyle Pitts, most recently, and Evan Ingram. But in those scenarios, it was either injury or terrible quarterback play. Jared Goff didn't get worse. Jared Goff is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, okay? Additionally, even on Sunday, Jameson Williams had 1 target. Laporta still nowhere to be found. Now, Jameson Williams is going to be suspended for the next 2 weeks because of PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. A 2-game suspension is very much so, I think it's weird. The last time I saw a player get suspended for PEDs was DeAndre Hopkins, and that was like a 6-game suspension, so very weird. But either way, I don't know what to do with Laporta. For Ferguson, yes, I'd rather have Ferguson rest of the season, because everything is pointing towards Laporta just being mid at this point. Less than mid, actually, because he's just not getting opportunity. Like, thus far this season, he's averaging less than 3 targets per game. Last season, he was averaging 7 targets per game. Like, the opportunity has been cut in half and beyond that. Now, I don't know, is the 2024 season the season of patience? Like, do we need to learn patience as fantasy managers? Maybe. Mark Andrews may demonstrate that. Maybe there are other players that we need to be more patient with and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. But quite frankly, we don't have time to be patient. When it comes to fantasy, if you keep stacking losses and keep fucking with my record, then the player is not reliable enough to potentially roll through. So in this scenario, yeah, I mean, Ferguson is the better option going forward. So I don't mind that. Now, as for potentially rostering Laporta on your bench, just in case the patience factor is something that we need to keep an eye on, then you'd hold him. But otherwise, in that scenario, I don't blame you for making that move, Caden. Mikey sends in a question, says, this is a half PPR league. My wide receivers are Godwin, Garrett Wilson, Debo, Bateman. Okay. My running backs are Javonte, Rashad, Etienne, and Mason. Okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, Rachaad White, very promising tonight. We'd love to see that. ETN hopefully will look like what Rachaad White looked like tonight and be the full-time receiving back of his offense going forward, hopefully. Hopefully ETN is utilized like Austin Eckler used to be utilized when they had Melvin Gordon in Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Like, just have him be the receiving back. Stop running him up the middle. Just give it to Tank. Tank is the better running back. In terms of running the ball on the ground, Tank has demonstrated already in just 5 games this season at a fuller capacity that he's just a better running back. So hopefully that continues. But yeah, losing Godwin's rough. Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, Bateman. I mean, again, I still think you can survive with those. Bateman has been great. As of the last 5 games, fantastic. Deebo, again, in the absence of Ayuk, is going to have to step up. Garrett Wilson, going forward, hopefully that offense figures it out, because otherwise, that's rough. But Javonte this week takes on the Carolina Panthers. Hopefully after that, maybe you can ship him off after, to get another running back, because I don't know if I can trust Javonte rest of the season unless it's in really advantageous matchups. But yeah, if you have a specific question in mind, Mickey, let me know. Let's see here. Let me actually look your name up in the chat. So Mickey says 2 of 2. In a PPR, I have high waiver. What do I do? Who do I trade for? I don't think you can trade for anybody. I'm going to be honest here. What should I use? My waivers on. I'm 4 and 3. Now I don't want to go downwards. Got it. So look, in terms of your waiver priority, I don't know who's available. Like if a Romeo Dobbs is available, again, it should not be. If a Tyrone Tracy is available, it should not be. Those are the guys you're going after, right? Alexander Madison, it shouldn't be available. But if it is, you go after it. Who's another wide receiver that theoretically, I'm trying to think. There were a couple names that I was looking at, and I was like, yeah, I could add this to the episode today, but like they shouldn't be available. Like Khalil Shakir shouldn't be available. Tyler Lockett shouldn't be available. Like even though those guys are like 57% rostered, 60% rostered, hopefully they're not available and that you play in a more competitive league. So in this scenario, with the context of your team and the injuries you just, unfortunately gathered up, like I'm taking Mason and I'm trading him to the McCaffrey owner for anything really at this point, because McCaffrey probably, sooner rather than later returns. I'm waiting for Javonte to have a big week here against Carolina. Then I'm shipping him off for a running back that has had themselves a downward spiral of a slate, because of tough matchups or, just a lack of overall opportunity near the goal line. Outside of that, again, I don't think you can really move anyone per se. Obviously, you try to sell Bateman at any, overall corner, but if those players that I mentioned aren't available, then you're going after Ricky Pearsall. That's it. That is your go-to at this point, because you need a wide receiver depth going forward, so that if in fact you are moving, like let's say for example you decide to move Garrett Wilson to get more running back depth, or you move Garrett Wilson and Javonte to go get something else, like a 2-for-2 or something of that exchange, you at least have a little more depth in that capacity. Auntie Slayer says, what happened with Whittington? He literally played 9 snaps. So basically, from what we heard from Sean McVay, of the idea of, yeah, he's going to be at a full capacity. The injury he sustained prior to the bye week is not a big deal. Good to go. They literally had him on a full bye week. Then they had him on a full week, and they still activated him just to play him in 9 snaps. He didn't play at all. So really, at this point, it's either he's legitimately injured and they just want to limit him, or they've decided out of randomness that Tyler Johnson needs to get the ball more, even though Whittington has been the better player. From my perspective, it's just coach speak. We got lied to straight up, and they have the right to lie to us, because again, they don't need to tell us the truth. It is a competitive advantage in order for them to just hide everything, and that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. Jorge Perez sends in a question. Thank you, Jorge. Let me see if I can find your question in the chat. Jorge says, hi, Andrew. In a full PPR, should I try to get Andrews back or keep Kraft for rest of season? I have Hawkinson. I mean, at this point, I still do believe, like I mentioned last week, Kraft can be traded. Three of the last 4 weeks, he has scored a touchdown and has been over 10 fantasy points. He can be traded. If you can go get Mark Andrews, again, then at that point, you have 3 valuable tight ends that can be traded to somebody in your league that does not have tight end depth, and it could give you something in return. So yeah, I don't mind that, as long as you're going to use it as a bargaining chip going forward in this scenario. Let's see here. Caden says, follow up. I picked up Ingram 2 weeks ago, so I'm okay without Laporta. Yeah, you're good to go then. Levant sends in a question, says, what should I do with Puka? He's coming back, ? Again, we don't know. He's still on the injured reserve. So this week against the So week 8 would have to pass. And then in week 9, he would theoretically potentially come back, I would assume. But again, we haven't heard anything. Considering it's a short week, I wouldn't assume that he does return because otherwise we would have heard, okay, Puka Nacua is practicing. If he's yet to practice, then that means that week 9 or maybe even week 10 is the return date. And if you need wins now, it may be a time to potentially move on from him. Let's see here. Head Shop sends in a question, says in a 12-team standard league, trade Garrett Wilson and BTJ for JJ or Hill. Yeah, I'm cool with that. As long as you have the depth to be able to sustain a move of that capacity, I have no issue trading for either of JJ or Hill in this scenario. Eddie J sends in a question, says, I got Pearsall, priority wide receiver, Coleman, McMillan, or Tillman. Out of those 3, I'd probably prioritize McMillan. Now, someone needs to remind me, McMillan, when he was in Washington last year as a member of the Washington Huskies, he was primarily a slot guy, right? If I'm not mistaken. If that is the case, then he's going to fill into exactly the role that we anticipate in regards to the Chris Godwin role, and it would make him the next highest priority wide receiver outside of Ricky Pearsall in this scenario. He could even be more valuable theoretically. We'll have to wait and see, though. Obviously, I give the advantage to Pearsall because of the first-round pedigree, him being associated with an offense that is in need of a wide receiver as well, and of course, he is the healthy one. George Kittle dealing with an injury, pneumonia, Deebo Samuel, hip injury with Juwan Jennings, all that kind of jazz. Eddie J sends in a question. Okay, we took care of Eddie J. Thank you. Lou sends in a question, says, I'm 5-2, bottom of the league in points for Mayfield, Bijan, Mixon, Moore, Kincaid, Hubbard, Shakir, Murray, Nacua. Should I be worried? I mean, look, Bijan and Mixon are fantastic. DJ Moore has been solid as of late. Hubbard has been fantastic. You need Nacua back. You need a solid wide receiver too, because really at this point, yes, you're going to lose some value out of Mayfield, but you have Murray to be able to suffice in the loss of that. So really, in terms of quarterback, running back, even wide receiver to an extent, I think you're solid. Nacua obviously has to return. If he doesn't sooner rather than later, then he needs to be shipped off in order to continue to maintain your record. But again, you're in a really comfortable position at 5-2 to where you don't really have to make any rash decisions or make any absolute league-altering, team-altering trades to where you have to make a swap here. Aiden0815 says, should I trade Kupp for Lamar Jackson? My wide receivers are Lamb, Higgins, and Ayuk, who is out for the season. Quarterback is Richardson and Mahomes. So, considering the quarterbacks that you have on roster, I would suggest that you should find another way to play another quarterback. Now, if that's even Russell Wilson, I'd say let's take Russell Wilson and let's start him instead. But as for Kupp for Lamar Jackson, if you're playing in a 3 wide receiver league and Kupp, Lamb, and Higgins can start every single week for you, then you'd probably keep. And now if you can't, and let's say, for example, you can start Lamb and Higgins every week for the remainder of the season, you have 3 stable running backs, 2 for running back starters, 1 for the flex, and you're just improving your quarterback, overall position with Lamar, then I don't have an issue with that. But only in a league where you have a double flex or a potential 3 wide receiver format would I be willing to just keep, Cooper Kupp in this scenario, and then theoretically just go to the waivers, pick up a Tua, pick up a, Russell Wilson, and just ride with them instead of, the absolute disaster that Richardson and Mahomes have been this season. Absolute disasters. Richardson it's ridiculous. Here's the thing. Richardson is not a polished passer, right? There's a lot of quarterbacks that come into the NFL and in their first year, they're not polished passers. I mean, I always kind of compare, and when I say it often. Richardson is Cam Newton plus Josh Allen, right? He's got the size, the physicality, the rushing ability. Additionally, he can throw the ball, but it's either the deep ball or something short. Nothing in between. Nothing in between ever hits. Rookie year for Josh Allen wasn't great, but he developed as a passer significantly because they brought in elite wide receiver talent like Stephon Diggs to improve. It's not to say that Pittman's bad, but really at this point, even with a talented wide receiver like Pittman, Richardson's not good, which is very much so concerning. And Mahomes, don't even get me started with Mahomes. It is, I mean, if there's ever been a year where someone can knock off the Chiefs, this is it. Legitimately, they do not have a functioning offense. Their defense is gifting them plays. They're gifting them series. If I'm telling you, the team that I believe has the Chiefs number and will always have the Chiefs number is the Bengals. If the Bengals sneak into the playoffs, I expect them to beat the Chiefs. Andy sends in a follow-up, says, thoughts on Neighbors going forward without Andrew Thomas? Yeah, that is a rough one. That is a rough one. I'm going to assume that going forward, they're going to kind of, you know what's funny? You would assume that if an NFL team, professionals, right? Professional coaches, the best players in the world, you would assume that if you knew that your left tackle was going to be out for the remainder of the season, you would help the backup left tackle just a little bit. They left the man on an island, and he got absolutely torched for the entirety of the game, and the rest of the offensive line fell apart as well. So really, as a whole, am I absolutely panicking about Neighbors? No. I'll give it a little bit more time just to see exactly what we get, but obviously it wasn't a great sign that they couldn't move the ball offensively. Let's see here. Chalateco09 says, drop Ridley for Tillman. Yeah, I mean, Ridley is, I would have dropped him last week after he dropped a goose egg on you. So yeah, I don't mind that. Jimmy sends in a question, says, trade Garrett Wilson and BTJ for CeeDee Lamb. Again, yeah, if you can afford to make a 2-for-1 of that capacity, I have no issue with that at all, Jimmy. James says, happy birthday. Thank you, man. Sean in the chat says, would you trade away Bucky or Hunt? Yeah, I'd be trading away Hunt unless I have Pacheco. Trife sends in a question. Says, dynasty question in the chat. Okay, let me just check it out right now. Says, running backs are Dowdle, Etienne, Mason, Pollard, Charbonnet, and Warren. Thoughts? Is that the question for the dynasty? Oh, no, this is it. Says, hey, Andrew, I need a quarterback in dynasty. I have Anthony Richardson and Kirk Cousins. Do I trade away Addison and Etienne for Drake May, Dobbs, and a late first? Here's the thing. Trading for Drake May, in my opinion, is not going to win you a championship this year. Because I talked about it earlier today. The upcoming schedule for Drake May, I mean, again, it is killer's row, murderer's row of secondaries. The Jets secondary, followed by the Tennessee secondary. Then you have Miami secondary, and then there's one more, Chicago secondary. That's murderer's row. If he can live through that, I'd be surprised. So if you're making this move for like the future, I could perhaps justify it. But as for the current, as for the like, hey, we're trying to win a championship this year, this is going to get me one step closer, I don't know if it actually does. I don't think it actually does. I think I'd rather just roll with Kirk Cousins, especially this upcoming week, taking on Tampa Bay's defense, who he had career high numbers against just a couple weeks back. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from Hopper, who says, where was Tank Dell this weekend? I'll tell you. Listen, I watched that game back. There's a lot of opportunities there, but unfortunately, the question is, where was CJ Stroud? The running game for the Houston Texans is incredible. Joe Mixon looks like the best NFL, running back right now based on his production. Now, obviously, secondary to like a Saquon Barkley or, Derrick Henry. But as of right now, that offense definitely knows how to run the ball. Passing the ball, though, without Nico Collins, they look like they're lost out there, unfortunately. Now, as for where he was, there were many of passes sent in his direction, but it's just a pure matter of inaccuracy. Like, there are multiple balls thrown right into the ground for Tank Dell. Doesn't even give him an opportunity. So, yeah, pretty rough week. 4 targets, 0 grabs. Yeah. Again, that's week 7. Week 7 was one of the worst weeks I've seen in a while. A lot of the fantasy leagues that I play in, every team scored below projection except for like maybe 2 teams out of the 12. Pretty crazy week. Pluto4 says, full PPR, trade Pollard for Higgins. I don't have an issue with that. If you're in need of a wide receiver, yeah, let's go for it. Connor says, I got offered Tyreek Hill for my neighbors. Except, yeah, I'll take Tyreek Hill. I don't have an issue with that. Cody Miller sends in a question, says, I'm currently 5-2 in first place in a 12-man full PPR team. I have Goff, Connor, Aaron Jones, Amon-Ra, London, Brian Thomas Jr., Olave, Kittle, Geno, Braylon, Benson, Chandler, and Bucky. Thoughts on my team? I mean, look, as far as your team as it currently stands, I have no complaints at all. There are top-tier players at every single position. They are consistent. You have your handcuffs. There's nothing that I have a complaint about with your team. You've constructed it properly, and obviously you've stayed healthy, and that's really all that matters. Amon-Ra, London are great. Connor and Aaron Jones, despite their age, are defying the odds. Goff has played well over the course of the last 4 weeks here. Kittle's the top-tier tight end. Obviously, Olave, once he gets back at a full capacity with Derek Carr, with no Shaheed, is going to be probably going to be a guy that's getting himself at least 10 targets a game, I would hope. Then we have you have Brian Thomas Jr., who's a monster. I have no complaints with this team, and I really have no suggestions. Now, as for your question, Connor and BTJ for Gibbs, At this point, I think you may be giving up too much. Unless Gibbs is going to be a 25-point running back rest of the season, which he certainly can be. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility. If Gibbs is going to be a 25-point per game running back, I'd say yes, absolutely, let's take the deal. Because if you were telling me like Connor and BTJ for Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley, I tell you to insta accept that. We'll take that. I don't have an issue with that. I wouldn't even blink. But as for Gibbs, the Montgomery issue, like that still is something that kind of scares me to the extent to where I'm like a little bit hesitant. But yeah, I mean, look, if you think you can survive with this team, if no injuries hit you, then you'll be fine. If you get hit with an injury, losing the depth of two players for one is enough to where it could derail your season pretty hard, even though you do have a stud team across the board. But yeah, I don't mind it. I'm okay with a trade, or maybe I'm indifferent about it. Maybe that's the right terminology that I should utilize. I'm indifferent. So I could take it, I could leave it, doesn't matter to me. All right, Cheeks sends in a question, says, Puka for Adams. I have more Coop, Nico, and friends. Yeah, I mean, look, if you need wide receiver depth now, and you cannot wait for the potential return of Puka Nacua, which again, I don't even know the current status of him. Technically, based on where we're sitting, the Rams' schedule, like, again, they've already passed their bye week. Technically, considering he sustained this injury in week 1 and missed week 2, 3, 4, and 5, he should have theoretically been eligible to play by week 7. He should have been eligible. But the fact that he didn't play last week, there's no sign of him playing next week, and we've heard no information regarding him potentially. Let me actually look this up. Let me go see if there's any news reports. News reports, Puka Nacua. Latest update on Puka Nacua. Let's see here. Control F, Puka. It says Puka Nacua appeared to aggravate a knee. Yep. Head coach Sean McVay announced that Puka Nacua, week 4. Jay Glazer reported that Puka Nacua will be out for at least another month, suggesting that the 23 until week 9 at the earliest. Yeah. So again, if you need a wide receiver, don't expect Puka Nacua to come back until week 10. So if you need to trade him, then yeah, let's move it. And I don't think Adams is a bad idea as for a potential kind of swap option there. Easy E sends in a question. Says, I'm 3-4. I have TJ Hawkinson. Should I drop McBride for Pearsall? Nope, absolutely not. McBride needs to be kept or traded. If you are going to pick up Pearsall, do it in a different manner in which you are. I mean, again, if you're playing in an 8-team league, right, and people do not need tight end, then sure. But if you're in a 10-team league, 12-team league, McBride should be a hot commodity considering the lack of tight end depth across the board and what he has been able to, present as a fantasy option over the course of the season thus far. Like, if I just reference his points thus far this season, I know, obviously tonight, not the greatest overall week, but across the board, he is just a solid, productive tight end. In a full PPR, 11.3, 17.6, 10.1. So he's going to be a double-digit tight end, which, again, there aren't very many of, unless your name is Will Dissly somehow tonight. I don't even know how that happened. But yeah, if you're playing in a smaller league, then I don't mind it. It's fine. Daniel Ludquist sends in a question. It says, I'm in an 8-man PPR. We have Baker, Caleb Williams, Gibbs, HN, Hunt, Mason, Dobbins, Lamb, Evans, London, McBride, Porta, Boswell, Aubrey. No trades. Value on the waivers. BTJ, Dobbs, Jay Williams, Irving, etc. Any recommendation? Wait, so those players are on the waivers. Got it. So this is my suggestion. If BTJ is on the waivers, he needs to be immediately picked up. So, wait, hold up. I want to confirm that is exactly what you are saying. Well, I'm going to assume that actually is what you're saying. Just confirm that for me, Daniel, just so that I have the full context. You're telling me that BTJ, Dobbs, Javonte Williams, and Bucky Irving are available on waivers? I mean, again, if it's a smaller league, I would be 100% understanding of that being the case, but I just want to confirm that for sure. So type it in the chat, yes or no. Thank you. Let's see here. Cameron Bridges sends in a question. Says, is it too early for Hunt for Christian McCaffrey and Olave? Wait, so you can trade Hunt and get Christian McCaffrey and Olave in return? I would say immediately say yes to that. Thank you. Let's see here. Machine sends it in the chat, says, Greetings and salutations is McMillan and Ad. Yes, he's the number 2 wide receiver and should be the number 2 waiver wire pickup of the week. Assuming, again, guys, if players like Tyrone Tracy, Alexander Madison, Romeo Dobbs aren't already rostered, the highest kind of valued players going into this week, assuming you don't need a quarterback, which again, many of you might need one, would be Ricky Pearsall and of course Jalen McMillan. Will Schofield sends in a question. Says rest of season standard, McMillan, Pearsall, Jennings, or Coleman. In a standard league, 0 points per reception. I would probably still lean in the direction of Pearsall number 1, McMillan number 2, Coleman number 3, Jawan Jennings number 4. Just like in which I have it in my video. I'm still very much so consistent with the idea that I'd like to have Pearsall over the bunch. But yes, I do see the value that McMillan presents, which is a lot. Again, those are the 2 players that truly, if you're playing in a league where everyone, you don't need a tight end, like Hunter Henry somehow isn't sitting on the waivers, or you don't need like a Kate Otten, which again could probably be on the waivers and is a great pickup if it is. As long as those players aren't available and you're not in a pinch for those, like McMillan and Pearsall are the 2 guys that I would want off waivers, and I'm willing to even rip my number 1 waiver for it. That's how legitimately valuable I think they are. Rajo sends in a question, says, should I keep or trade? I'm 3 and 4 with Kyler, Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Brees, pretty good running backs, Hunt, Chubb, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, Kupp, Reed. Nope, you keep. Brother, you've got a very, very strong team. If you are going to make a trade, you are trading Hunt with maybe Chubb. You could potentially even trade Chubb right now for like Pacheco, and I think that would be smart. Otherwise, you would trade like Hunt plus somebody else to the Pacheco manager for something in return. Otherwise, very strong team, man. You just gotta keep it patient and keep it rolling. Raghav sends in a question. Says in a 10-man PPR, I'm 3 and 4. Okay, let me check that out in a second. I'm gonna just wait and see if Daniel Lundquist sent in a question or the follow up to that. So let me see. That's not what I wanted to do. It's Lund. Sorry, I mispronounced that because I'm dyslexic. Lundquist says also thoughts on targeting Otten. Let's see here. Yes, all available. Cool. So considering the team, Daniel, as a whole, the biggest priorities that you probably should set on, right? Because again, you already have Gibbs, HN, Hunt, Mason, Dobbins, really solid running backs. Lamb, Evans, which is going to be out for some time. London, McBride, Porta, Boswell, Aubrey. Okay, so this is what you need to do. Boswell's got to go. Now that Aubrey comes back, he's got to be the first drop. BTJ is the number 1 pickup, and it's not even remotely close in this scenario. As for the second best available potential pickup, really at this point, I mean, I don't even actually go after anybody else. Unless you're going to maybe drop Laporta for one of these guys. Again, you're not going to even play them. Unless you're playing in a league where you can start like 10 players. When I say players, I mean like excluding kickers and defense. I think that's the only potential swap that I make. Now, you're asking about potentially picking up Otten. I'd assume that you'd be referring to dropping Laporta in this instance. Again, in your scenario, I think I'd start probably McBride every single week rest of season, and I wouldn't even blink. But again, if you want to, I don't blame you if you make the swap, or just stay patient with it and see what comes of it. Or maybe even just drop Laporta for like Javonte at this point, considering he's taking on the Carolina Panthers just to take advantage of that matchup in a 1-week play. All right, let's see here. Raghav sends in a question. Let's see if I can find your question in the chat. Raghav says, my quarterback is Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Sam Darnold, okay? Running backs are Achane, Hubbard, Connor, and Jacobs, ETN. Jamar, Kupp, Debo, Wanda Robinson, along with Evan Ingram and Ferguson. Streaming defense with the Bengals this week, and kicker was Reichard. How can I recover? Recover? I mean, brother, you've got to... I mean, recover is a completely different concept than what I actually think recover is, maybe. Because Jordan Love, Achane, Jacobs, with either Hubbard and Connor in the flex, with Jamar, Debo, or Kupp at wide receiver, with Ferguson at tight end, I don't see a quote-unquote recover. I see a start the lineup every single week and let it ride. That's the way I see it, at least. I don't see like a way to where you're significantly improving this team unless someone wants to come to you, take Hubbard and Connor, and give you a Gibbs, or give you a superior running back at the very top of the conversation, a Mixon, a Saquon, a Henry, a Jonathan Taylor when healthy. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, really, there's no There's no recover. That's a strong team across the board. Love, Achane, Jacobs, Hubbard, Connor. I mean, again, ultimately, that's like 3 top 15 running backs. That's a top 5 quarterback, probably, based on schedule. Jamar Chase, Debo, Kupp, when they're fully healthy and going, these guys are monsters. Ferguson. So yeah, I don't really see any, like, again, unless you're making some 2-for-1s, you're not really moving. Jeff says tight end crushed this weekend. Thoughts on low-key tight end picks for the rest of season schedule? What do you mean by low-key tight end picks? Are we talking about like Will Disley's, or are we talking about Jonnu Smith and Jontavion Sanders and kind of stuff like that? Because, again, I mean, you know what's funny? Tight end may have killed this weekend, but the actual best position this last weekend was kicker. And it's not even close. I'm pretty sure if I had to look at it right now, I'm going to actually do so. I'm going to look this up. So if I go to week 7, tight ends, right? Tight end had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There were 11 tight ends that scored over 10 fantasy points in a half PPR scoring format. Okay. Anybody want to guess how many kickers scored over 10 fantasy points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The kicker position is just as valuable as tight ends. So really at this point, presented as for the future, are there going to be tight ends that step up and have more value going forward? Absolutely. As for are we picking them up? Again, if you're in need of one, then sure, absolutely. Why not? Okay, let's see here. Sean Trevino sent in a follow-up. I'd answer one of your questions, Sean. Says in a 14-team PPR, 4-3. Quarterback is Dak and Sam Darnold. We have Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Hunt, Bucky, Tracy. Wide receivers are Wanda Robinson, BTJ, Debo, Flowers, Adunze, Douglas. Tight ends are Kincaid. Any suggestions or waiting on Christian McCaffrey? Yeah, look, at this point, Achane, Hunt, Tracy, and Bucky will get the job done until the return of Christian McCaffrey. And at that point, you'll be really strong with an Achane, Christian McCaffrey and Tracy backfield, most likely. Hunt will probably be gone by that point, right? By at least week 10, which is McCaffrey's expected return. So you're good at running back. I don't really think I'm making any moves there. As for your wide receiver, Wanda Robinson, BTJ, Debo, Flowers, Adunze, Douglas. Again, in these games in which the unfortunate Baltimore Ravens are blowing out their enemy teams, unfortunately, there are circumstances in which, of course, it happened this week, Zay Flowers disappears. That has happened 3 different occasions this season, including today. If they are not staying competitive and the opposing team is not back and forth with them, he will disappear in matchups, unfortunately. So really, in the rest of the season, like BTJ and Debo are your guys. Flowers is at like contingency number 3. Wanda Robinson is a strong number 4 to say the very least. Kincaid is really your weakest player because I think Sam Darnold will be fine. So it's just a matter of like maybe improving tight end, maybe going out and like picking up one of these guys that has performed well in week 7 and seeing if they can find some sort of consistency going forward. Christian Taylor says, I got offered Waddle for Mason. Do I take it? I would. If you don't have Christian McCaffrey and you can get Waddle for practically free at this point, considering Mason was not really a high drafted player, and you're going to have Tua Tagovailoa returning against Arizona and the upcoming matchups again. Like I mentioned earlier today when I talked about Tua on the waiver wire episode, I truly do believe that the Dolphins can win the 4 of the next 5 games with Tua Tagovailoa under center. Again, they've got some relatively easy matchups against teams that just really aren't going to be able to highly compete. Now, there's a chance that they could win maybe 3 out of the 5, which would be that kind of worst case scenario in my opinion. Again, let me look at their upcoming schedule. So under the assumption that like their biggest competition games are the Bills and the Rams, okay? Taking on the Cardinals this upcoming week, I think they'll win. Then the Bills the next week in Buffalo, not a great matchup. I'd assume they'd lose. Playing the Rams, very competitive. Well, that's a coin toss, especially if the Rams have Puka/Kupp back at a full capacity. Then you play the Raiders, you win that one. Then you play the Patriots, you win that one. 3 of the next 5 wins here. I mean, again, there's a lot of value to be had with Waddle in these kind of circumstances. And even in the competitive games against Buffalo or against the Rams, very advantageous matchups for the secondary. Ando says, rest of season Koo or Aubrey. I'd probably stick with the idea of, at this point, Younghoe Koo has just been an absolute machine. Let me see here. How many put up this week? He had 2 points. Yeah, honestly, considering they both play indoors, I don't really have a superior preference between the two. I do believe that Aubrey is just a better 50-plus yard field goal kicker, so I'd probably just lean in his direction, especially if you get 5 points per kick. Let's see here. Keep Juju, Ladd, or Myers. I'd probably, okay. Juju, we don't know how long that injury is going to sustain. They already said that he's not playing this week. Ladd McConkey is a solid option, but again, that offense doesn't throw the ball enough to make him like a completely consistent player week in and week out. So really, I mean, Myers is the guy who I probably would rather have, especially with Gardner Minshew being the starting quarterback going forward, most likely, with Aiden O'Connell headed to the IR with a broken thumb. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from Cameron Bridges who says, Swift and BTJ for Lamb, too much, question mark? Considering how well Swift is played, I have J-Jet in London. Yeah, look, if you're going to bring in Lamb and you're going to pair it up with Justin Jefferson and Drake London, and your running back depth can sustain losing Swift, then I'd say, okay, let's go for it. I have no issue with it at all. I wouldn't blink. I think you'd have a really good team at that point. Filippo sends in a question, says, check the comment about Chase Brown trade. Okay, cool. Let me check it out right now. Control F. All right, says, sent some comment about roster earlier. Okay, let me see if it's in the chat. Okay, I see it. It says, would you trade Chase Brown for Waddle in a half PPR? Chase Brown for Waddle. Okay, I'm 6-2. My 12 in a 12-team league. I have Saquon, Connor, Chuba, Benson, along at running back, and then I have DK, Garrett Wilson, Deontay Johnson, Rome Odunze, and Juju Smith-Schuster wide receiver. Okay, so would I trade that for that? Yes, I would. I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue with that. It's a half PPR. I'm okay with the trade. I think it's relatively equal value going forward in terms of points. I think it's more of a matter of like what you need. And considering DK Metcalf just got his knee injury, Deontay Johnson's always on the injury report, Juju's hurt, like you're going to need a little bit of wide receiver depth in this circumstance going forward. And I think at running back like Saquon, Connor, Chuba will be able to sustain for you. So yeah, I don't have an issue with that trade. Thank you. Okay, scrolling back down here. Axe in the chat says Richardson or Geno. I'd rather have Geno. Sean K says 60 feet, field goal attempt. No one I would want more than Aubrey. Yeah, you mean 60-yard, but yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, Aubrey is just a machine. It's crazy how good he's been over the course of the last 2 seasons. Tyler says, who from Tampa is waiver target with Godwin and Evans out? So yeah, number 1 would be Jalen McMillan. And then at that point, it'd probably then pivot to the potential of Cade Otton getting himself more utilization within that offense. So those would be the 2. Now, there's always an opportunity or potential in which we could see. Let's see here. If I go to... I'm actually curious. Let's pull this up. So if we go look up the snap counts from today. So McMillan obviously is a starter. So he's going to stay in that lineup. And he'll continue to be a guy that is prioritized. Like today, in terms of overall snaps, he played 49 snaps. Now, Trey Palmer, on the other hand, who's been banged up all season, he played 59 offensive snaps. Jeez Louise. He played more snaps, huh? And I didn't even notice he was on the field. So it'd be McMillan 1 and Trey Palmer 2. Those are the two, the year 1 and the year 2 receivers that you'd want, right? And then, of course, Cade Otton. For sure. Hold on to Jaden Reed or trade him away. It depends on what you're getting in exchange. I don't mind ever trading a player away as long as you are getting comparable value in return based on the potential for their upside remainder of the season. Rebel says, what do I do with Tyreek? You play him this week when Tua returns and every week henceforth after that because they're past their bye week. Let's see. Let me scroll down here. X sends in a question, says, rest of season, Tua, Drake May, Russell Wilson for a 4-point per passing touchdown format. I'd probably say it's in a 4-point, like I'd probably go, depends, right? Considering Russell has a bye week in week 9, look, I prefer Russell this week. This upcoming week against the Giants, I'd rather play Russell. But considering he has a week 9 bye, I think it might be better to just pick up Tua and play him in the next couple weeks here, because at least you won't have to swap your quarterback henceforth after that. Let's see here. Jake O'Connor says, I'm in a full PPR 4-3. Would you trade away Mahomes, Higgins, Kamara for Josh Allen and Mixon? Honestly, really, I don't see Mahomes having value in this scenario. So it's really just Higgins and Kamara for Mixon and Allen, which in this circumstance, let me see your roster. I have Drake May, I have Kupp, Nico, Puka, Dell, Douglas. I mean, so you have no wide receiver health. So trading away Higgins actually kills you. Am I wrong? Like, you have Dell. Okay, so you can survive. You can survive until the return. Yeah, I don't mind the trade. I don't mind it at all. That's fine by me. I'll take the Josh Allen side. The Jeek says, full PPR, rank Laporta, Otten, and Kraft rest of season. Brother, I don't think I can. I don't think I can actually... I don't know what Laporta is. So in that circumstance, considering I have no idea what his value is rest of the season, now that, of course, Jameson Williams is going to miss the next 2 weeks, I'd like to hope that Laporta is pulling a Mark Andrews and just taking the first month of the season off, first 2 months of the season off, to then just finally come back and actually be fantasy relevant. Otherwise, I really don't know his value. Like, off the top of my head, I probably want to defer to him being the most valuable prospect, but truly, nothing that he has done or the offense has kind of conspired to do leads me to believe that. So at this point, it's just like probably Cade Otton that's the most valuable of that group if, the Detroit Lions continue to ignore, Laporta, unfortunately. Do I start Otton or Laporta next week? At this point, I mean, you can't start Laporta. You kind of have to have him prove it before you can even start him in a circumstance like that. I think they play against Tennessee, which it's not a bad matchup. It's just we don't expect him to do anything because he doesn't get targets. What running back can I target with Puka and a half PPR? James Conner, probably, if I had to guess, especially considering he hasn't had like major weeks of production. Let's see here. Jay McLaughlin says rest of season ranking Kamara in standard. Any chance of him getting traded? I don't know. I mean, I looked at his schedule and how it's kind of constructed. They had an opt-out in 2024, so it's going to be tough to see him potentially be traded, but there's always a potential. There's a team out there that may want him. Maybe like the Dallas Cowboys just want to go, boom or bust with it and fully send it. They could. You never know. I doubt that they do, but there's always a possibility. Time will tell, I guess. Use my number one priority on McMillan or Otten. I have McBride and I have Zay Flowers, Myers at wide receiver. At that point, I just use it on McMillan, Trife. Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about Otten in that scenario. I'd go straight for McMillan. Let's see here. Joseph Mai says, would you rather have Tucker Kraft or Hunter Henry in a half PPR? I have Kittle. Also, is Juju. Okay, so between those two, rest of season, considering how the offenses are constructed, I'd rather have Hunter Henry rest of season. Just based on the offensive coordinator and the priority of tight end. That leans me in that direction. Now, as for your next thing, I have Kittle. Okay, very well. So you're not even starting him. Also, okay, but that being said, like, am I picking up Hunter Henry and dropping Kraft for it? No, because I don't want to drop Kraft. I want to trade him away. When he scores a touchdown in 3 of the last 4 games, it implies that he has to be a tradable option. Somebody in your league has to be willing to buy in on that. Otherwise, I don't think you can actually just drop. I mean, you could drop him for free, but I mean, you're theoretically just losing value for free, which some scenarios, I guess you might have to. All right, let's see here. Reese says, trade Neighbors for Higgins and Evan Ingram. I'm in a 10-team league. I don't think I'd take that, actually. Let me see here. You have Burrow, Henry, Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson, Dobbins, Amon-Ra, Hill, Moore, Debo, Ferguson. No, I keep it as is. Don't trade away Neighbors. Keep what you have and keep your roster as is, Reese. Or Reese. Unknown says, I need a suggestion. I have Hurts, Caleb, Chuba, Cook, Mason, Cooper, McLaurin, Kincaid, Pollard, Ertz, Pittman, Ayuk, Douglas, and Christian McCaffrey in a 10 PPR. Need suggestions on what? I mean, at this point, Chuba, Cook, Mason. I'd like to trade Mason to get Christian McCaffrey. You already have Christian McCaffrey, so you're fine there. So then Chuba and Cook will suffice until then. Cooper, McLaurin, okay, it's fine. Kincaid, I don't love. We need to probably have Ertz, which again, at that point, you're kind of vulnerable. Ayuk's out for the season. Pittman is unstartable. Douglas is unstartable until otherwise noted, until we get into like pretty good matchups. So basically, looking at your team as a whole, unless you're like, if you really want to shake it up, you'd be taking Jalen Hurts and you'd be trading him away and you'd keep Caleb as your starter for the rest of the season. And you'd be looking to target a wide receiver in exchange for Jalen Hurts. All right, scrolling down a couple more super chats that were sent in. Let me just go ahead and get to those right now. We had one that came in from Ronald94 who says, should I trade away Devontae Smith, Chuba Hubbard, and DK Metcalf for Achane and Hunt? Nope, absolutely not. You got to remember, again, Hunt will eventually disappear by week 10. There's a possibility that Chuba Hubbard can still maintain the starting job in that backfield in comparison to Hunt, who will eventually lose it to Pacheco's return. So basically at that point, really, the value is on the side of Devontae Smith and DK Metcalf, unless we are to believe that DK Metcalf is going to miss a significant volume of time, which I don't believe that is to be the case based on the injury designation that they presented earlier today. Inderjit sends in a question, says, Jefferson for Marvin and Pickens. I had Godwin. Nope, I wouldn't make that trade. I keep Jefferson and I hit the waivers, and that's how you would, kind of fill in. I think making that move is not the greatest as of right now. Easy E says Pearsall or McMillan. I just traded Godwin for Achane. How did you trade Godwin for Achane, brother? you scam somebody? That's maybe that's BM. That's bad manners to trade away an injured player to someone that may not know. But either way, Pearsall is the preferred out of the two, at least from my perspective. Again, if you prefer to go after McMillan because again, less competition, all that kind of jazz, I don't have an issue with that. I think, again, they're both the top two priority players going into the week. Unless, of course, like I mentioned earlier, somehow, some way, there are players like Tracy, Alexander Madison, Romeo Dobbs, Tyler Lockett available somehow in your league. That shouldn't be. Ibrahim sends in a question, says, is Evans 100% on the IR? No, I wouldn't say that he's 100% on the IR, but think about it this way, right? The hamstring injuries that we have seen, the significant ones, right, where people are leaving games and not returning. For example, A.J. Brown, right? Like, how long did it take A.J. Brown to return? He got injured in week 1, and he missed week 2, 3, 4. They went on week 5 bye and only just returned in week 6. So he was out for 4 weeks. So I want to assume that, and again, let's talk about Nico Collins. Just most recently got put on the injured reserve because of the hamstring. So if the hamstring injury is anywhere close to the severity of those, I would assume that, yes, he's probably going to miss at least 3 weeks. But really, they're going to probably put him on the IR just to be safe with 4. Also, I need a wide receiver this week. I have Deontay Johnson versus Denver. I'm not playing that. What's a better option? I would assume that this upcoming week, Patrick Surtain II will clear concussion protocol and he will return. I am not playing Deontay Johnson against that defense. I am firing up all of my Denver Broncos and having fun when doing so. So in this circumstance, your alternative options, let's see here. What's a better option? Dobbs, Lockett, Judy, Kirk, or Downs? Okay, I think it's very much so dependent, and I think we'll get a clearer answer as the week progresses. If DK Metcalf is going to miss this week against the Buffalo Bills, you would play Lockett there if DK Metcalf is out. If he is not out, at that point, I'm just going to roll with Romeo Dobbs out of the group. Andrew just sends in a follow-up, says, I need ETN to get traded. I mean, I think that's a long shot, but there's always a potential of it. Again, the idea of trading for a rookie that was a former first-round pick isn't a bad idea because you also have the 5th-year option on him, which, again, a team could find value in doing that and potentially going after him. But time will tell. Again, if the Jaguars continue to trend in the wrong direction, this week they take on the Green Bay Packers, chalk that up as a loss already, there will be a chance in which they probably will end up moving him. Or at least maybe they'll get a couple phone calls. I don't know if they will move him. Again, obviously a team needs to come in with the correct volume of draft capital in exchange for him that they feel comfortable moving him for. Let's see here. Law C says, greetings and salutations in a 12-man full PPR 2-man flex. Questions in the chat. All right, very well. Let me see if I can find this question, Law. Law C says, I have Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Kareem Hunt, Justin Jefferson, McLaurin, Laporta, Dobbins, Deontay Johnson, Swift, Rashad White, BTJ Mooney. Trade BTJ, Mahomes, Laporta, and Dobbins for Love, London, and Ferguson. Okay, so Love is a significantly better quarterback than Mahomes. I prefer to have Ferguson over Laporta. Therefore, it's just a matter of you get Love, yeah, I'll take the trade. Give me the London side of that deal. Love, London, and Ferguson, I'll take it. Yep, sounds good to me. Or without tight ends. No, I'm okay with the trade. I don't have an issue with that. They could have Laporta. Just give me Ferguson. That works for me. All right, moving on to the next question from Basil Abdullah, who says, Reed and Hunt for Kamara in a PPR. Your beard is amazing. Listen, this beard has not been removed for quite a while. I don't think, man, I'm trying to think, when did I actually start growing this thing? I mean, obviously I take care of it, right? But, you guys remember, it wasn't taken care of for many of years. You go back, for those of you who are new to the channel, just go back a couple years in the overall catalog of videos, okay? Andrew looked like a completely absolute caveman of a human for quite a while there. But in regards to your question, am I trading Reed and Hunt for Kamara? If Kamara is going to be a 6-point running back for the rest of the season, then I wouldn't make that trade. But I don't expect him to be that. I expect him to get back on track, and I probably would make this trade. Unless you have Pacheco, in which you need to have Hunt on roster to kind of recoup that value, I would make the trade, and I'll take Kamara rest of the season in a PPR. Tex Raider sends in a question, says, Algier worth stashing in a 10-team with Bijan? Yes, absolutely. I think it's just a safety protocol. It's not really something that is going to help you on a weekly basis, but if you don't need that help with with your bench depth, and you have enough viable options on a weekly basis, and you're not going to go into a bye week hell, I think it's a pretty safe measure to have. Jay Spear sends in a question, says, 10-team full PPR, pick up Jacoby Myers, Juwan Jennings, or Green Bay Packers wide receivers except for Jaden Reed. Yeah, okay, so of those potential available options, the way that I would rank them, number 1 is Romeo Doubs. Number 2 is Jacoby Myers. Number 3 would be Juwan Jennings. Number 4 would be Christian Watson. That's the order in which I would go about it. Again, from the top to the bottom, Doubs, Myers, Jennings, and Watson. I could drop Kraft for Njoku or Ingram. I would drop Kraft for I would drop Kraft for Njoku, but I also want to try to trade Kraft. But considering those guys are available, I mean, again, Njoku's probably the guy that you want to have on roster going forward. iShine101 says, evening, Drew. Should I drop JSN for Ricky Pearsall? Considering DK's injury, there's a potential which JSN could get more exposure to opportunity if DK is going to miss time. That would give him a lot of value in this circumstance. That being said, if, let's say, for example, that's a tough one. I actually don't think that's an easy answer. It depends. Like if JSN is a current starter for your team and is currently starting, I would say probably hold on to him and find another way. Because picking up Pearsall and immediately throwing him in and expecting him to put up massive points is going to be tough. Or at least getting himself a massive volume of targets is going to be tough. Because again, you got to remember, what Ayuk was getting as of late was not incredible numbers of targets, right? 6-7 targets at very best. So that's what we expect out of Ricky Pearsall. We just hope that, the yards after the catch, the Shanahan scheme would elevate him. Damn, that's actually a good one. Like, if Metcalf's healthy and he plays this week, I'd make the move. And I just go with Ricky Pearsall rest of the season. But if Metcalf's going to miss time, I'd want to get some sort of value boost out of JSN because I think he'd be a better option starter going forward. Metro Boomin sends in a question, says, don't know what to do with Jordan Mason. Who can I trade for? I mean, really, it's up to the mercy of your league. Your league dictates the value of Jordan Mason, not really you. It's very much dependent on what they're willing to give you. And quite frankly, the only person that would want to trade for Jordan Mason is either a Christian McCaffrey non-believer or a Christian McCaffrey manager, which again, I don't think there are very many people trading for Mason if they don't have McCaffrey. So really, it's just a matter of what does the McCaffrey manager want to give you in exchange? And are they even willing to give you anything? Or are they content with the idea that they've already lived without Mason and they've figured it out since? So unless somebody's coming forward and giving you potential offers, really, I don't think you can get much out of Mason unless, that McCaffrey manager just says, hey, I want, I'll take him, but this is all I can give you. And whatever that best offer is what you can get. Otherwise, it's nothing at all. Croza sends in a question, says, I'm in first place, 6-1 in a 12-team full PPR. I have Josh Allen, Brian Robinson Jr., T. Higgins, Kittle starting very well. My bench is Chris Godwin, out for the season. Juju, out for this week. ETN, probably out for another week. Michael Wilson, dud. Rashad Bateman, looking better. Sermon, droppable. Vidal, handcuff. Komet, which again, this upcoming week should be solid. Am I cooked? I don't think you're cooked per se. I mean, again, you got to definitely hit the waivers. I mean, at this point, considering Juju's already been, the coaching staff's already designated him out, so he goes to your IR. Godwin gets dropped, so that's one open spot. Sermon gets dropped, that's another open spot. Michael Wilson gets dropped, that's another open spot. So you have like three spots to kind of open up and work with and hit the waivers for sure. 12th on waivers, missing key players. Yeah, you got to definitely you got to hit the waivers and just try to pick up any of the scraps and or potential volume. Now, you could also be in a position to where you're like, listen, I know I'm not going to get anything, so I'm just not going to even put in a waiver, and I'm just going to go up in priority for future weeks. I think that's a pretty strong strategy as well, but I also still do believe that those players I just mentioned that need to be dropped should still be dropped, and you should still hit for, any sort of scraps that are remaining. Isaiah Spivey says, rate my team. Should I try to trade at all in a one? Okay, so we have one quarterback league. We have Josh Allen. We have running back Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams. We have A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Kenneth. We have Evan Ingram at tight end. We have Achane. We have the Vikings defense. Nope, no needs to move. You're good to go, Isaiah, man. I mean, that's as strong as of a team that you could possibly have in that scenario. Let's see here. Onage says, glad Charles got pole position. I don't even know who this is, brother. Angel Montero says, what do you think Kraft's trade value is in a full PPR? Okay, so here's the thing. Kraft is a player that you would only trade to a team that is in need of a tight end. So really, it's just a matter of like, if you're going to trade a tight end to a team that is in need of a tight end and you're going to ask for one of their running backs or wide receivers, oftentimes they will probably say, I need a running back or a wide receiver in return. So in these scenarios, you're probably going to have to trade a running back plus Kraft or a wide receiver plus Kraft for a wide receiver or a running back. That's probably the way that you'd have to go about it, because I don't think that there are very many teams out there, unless super desperate, that they're willing to just give you a Rico Dowdle for Kraft. If someone's out there that wants to give you Rico Dowdle for Kraft, by all means, I take the deal. And then I go pick up another tight end off of waivers. Let's see here. Jay McLaughlin says, would you trade Bucky and Tracy in a standard for Mason? If you have McCaffrey, sure. Otherwise, no. Rowett says, hey, Andrew, in a PPR league where the owner doesn't value Hill for some reason, okay, I have Ayuk, Shaheed, Rice out for the rest of the season. Would you rather move Dobbins or Chubb with another piece for Hill? I would rather move Chubb with another piece for Hill immediately. Yeah, immediately. That would be great. And then you said, I love Chubb. Yeah, I don't care. At this point, the thing is, like, between him and Dobbins, Chubb is going to take a little while to really get going. 11 carries for 22 yards is not an accident. That is him ramping up. If you think you can wait and be patient for the ramp up, then go for it. Move Dobbins instead. But otherwise, I would probably try to move Hill. Or sorry, not Hill. I would try to probably move Chubb instead. Reese says, thanks, Andrew. Sorry for the confusion. I would be getting neighbors. LOL. Worth it then? Yes, it would be worth it then. Ando says, I'm currently 4-3. We have Connor and Higgins or Reed for Achane. And Worthy or Watson. Look, Worthy and Watson aren't worth anything, Ando. So really, you're giving a 2-for-1 up. And it's really dependent on what the rest of your team looks like. You have Barkley, Jacobs, Connor, Chubb. So again, you've got good running back depth. Then you have Jonathan Brooks as well, just in case. You have wide receivers London, Reed, Hill, Higgins, Puka. Okay, so in this circumstance, I'm willing to make either the two trades. Whichever one you want to make that gets you Achane, so be it. Honestly, I wouldn't even ask for Worthy or Watson in return. I'd just say I'd want the 2-for-1 so I can hit the waivers and pick up Pearsall at this point, just to have some value there. Or maybe another tight end or something. What can I target with Hunt? Full PPR? Depends. Is there any team in your league that actually wants Hunt that doesn't have Pacheco? If there's a team in your league that wants Hunt and doesn't have Pacheco, just trade it to them. Because really, you have to understand that you're sitting on a ticking time bomb that eventually will disappear from under you. Top waiver targets: Pearsall, McMillan. I mean, again, those are the top two guys. Running back, there's nothing available. Unless, again, somehow, some way, Tyrone Tracy and Alexander Madison are available in your league, which they shouldn't be. But McMillan and Pearsall are the one too. Godwin is out for the season. From what we've heard from Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after the game, he said in the press conference that Godwin is out indefinitely with a ankle dislocation. I don't know what the prognosis of the potential return is, but I would assume that it's probably it's not good if they're saying out indefinitely. But even if he's not out for the season, he's out probably for 2 months, which again is for fantasy purposes the whole season. Starter Kit Duke says Jennings or Pearsall for rest of season. I'd prefer to have Pearsall. Again, I would assume that the reason you spend a first round draft capital on a wide receiver of the caliber of Pearsall is to bring him in and make him an impact player. And obviously he got shot in the chest a couple months ago, which definitely did slow down his overall progression as a player, but he's gotten healthy now and he's back and he's going to be asked to be a huge, mainstay. While of course Jennings on the other hand is already still dealing with an injury. So Pearsall's the guy. Croza says Josh Allen, Bijan, Higgins, Kittle, Hood. Who's Hood? Value, should I trade at all for more depth? Or like you said, just drop the duds and grab scraps? Yeah, I wouldn't be making moves. I would keep the studs and I would just drop the duds and pick up scraps. Because I think the studs, in order to make an improvement on what you have currently, someone's going to have to give you a significantly better player, which again is going to require probably 2 players off of your team in exchange for it. Would you trade Kareem Hunt for Tony Pollard straight up? Abso-fucking-lutely. Not even close. If somebody is willing to give you Tony Pollard, who has the rest of the season, weeks 8 through 16, available to him to ball out. If someone's willing to give you that for a player like Kareem Hunt, which again, eventually will disappear to Pacheco's return in week 10 or 11, dude, you're scamming them at that point. Absolutely, I take that trade. Someone said you can't have an ankle dislocation without a fracture. Good to know, Joseph. Thank you very much. So, yeah, that doesn't really sound good either. Jeez Louise. Gio Gomez says, should I drop Worthy? I'm willing to drop him. Again, if you're going to get some of the players like I mentioned, like a Pearsall or a McMillan, I think that's definitely something that I'd be willing to make the swap for. This week was a massive curveball. No, it wasn't a massive curveball. Let me tell you what this week was. The pitcher, which is the fantasy gods, they sat back at the top of the mound, they cranked the ball, and they threw it straight at our domes, okay? And luckily, we're wearing a helmet so we can survive for the rest of the season, but they tried to take our head off this week. That's really what just eventually happened in week 7, unfortunately. An absolute disaster. All right, how long have we been here for? Just want to confirm. We've been streaming for an hour and 19. Okay, so like I've mentioned, guys, in the past, and for those of you who go ahead and swing on by during these live streams, I like to have them for about an hour to an hour and a half. I think that's what we're going to call it. Again, I'll be back tomorrow night around 7 p.m. PST to live stream, answer more questions regarding waiver wire pickups and all that kind of jazz. Again, tomorrow we'll have our top 40 running back rankings for this upcoming weeks. And then, of course, additionally, tomorrow I'm probably going to add rest of season strength of schedule within the running back position video, okay? So besides the regular strength of schedule at the beginning of the video, I'm also going to include rest of season from weeks 8 through 14, and then from weeks 15 through 16 week 15 through 17 for the fantasy playoffs, so that all of that is good to go in terms of understanding who has the best schedule going forward in that circumstance, okay? We had a question that came in for G Hefe. Thank you very much, G. G says, would you trade Marvin Harrison and Brian Robinson for JT? Depends on running back depth that I have on my roster, because again, there's a possibility that JT doesn't play this week. And if you're okay with that, fine. Additionally, also has to do with wide receiver depth. If Marvin Harrison is barely even a starter on your team, is potentially like that number 3, number 4 option, I'd be okay with the trade. Because I do believe that JT coming back will be a significant starter and probably the better option of the bunch. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm going to cue the music. I'm going to go work on that running back video. I appreciate y'all. Again, we did post the video in regards to waiver wire targets. Besides, obviously guys that played well tonight that technically aren't in that video because, unfortunately, video is recorded before that. Again, I'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate y'all. Tyler Sperry sends in the final question of the day. Says, is Otten auto start now? I have guessed thoughts on Bateman. Yes, Otten is an auto start. Again, understand, though, that this matchup against the Baltimore Ravens was really advantageous. Now, additionally, again, he's going to get himself more opportunity for targets because of the absence of Evans and Godwin. Additionally, Bateman, I've mentioned him, this is 3 weeks in a row running now for waiver wire. So, yeah, definitely pick him up if you have an opportunity to do so. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. And until tomorrow, have a great rest of your night. I'm going to cue the music, and I'll send it off. See you guys. Peace.